Several more months passed by in the blink of an eye. In the sky above a primordial desert, a flying carriage was racing along like a bolt of green lightning, only appearing for an instant before vanishing into the distant horizon. On the flying carriage, Han Li wore a grim expression as he made a rapid string of hand seals. Taoist Xie and Xiao Bai were situated on either side of him, releasing a burst of yellow light and white light, respectively, into his body. Han Li's expression didn't betray his emotions, but internally he was feeling rather frustrated. Over the past month, the gold-devouring immortal had been pursuing them like mad, and somehow it had managed to speed up significantly, exerting immense pressure upon Han Li. He was forced to use his lightning teleportation array on many occasions in succession in a short time, and at this point, the lightning power reserves in his body had completely run dry. At this point, the gold-devouring immortal was only several 100,000 kilometers away. Jin Tong was currently inside Xiaobai's stomach, so they weren't in any danger for now. But once she came out, the gold-devouring immortal would be able to catch up to them in a very short time, and it had already been over an hour since Jin Tong had entered Xiaobai's stomach. This meant that it wasn't going to be long before he had to directly face an enemy far more formidable than himself. Even in this dire situation, Han Li remained calm and collected. At this moment, he was releasing his spiritual sense to constantly keep tabs on his surroundings, and at the same time, his mind was racing as he tried to think of a way out of this predicament. All of a sudden, something caught his attention, and he looked down in a certain direction. At this point, the flying carriage had already emerged from the desert, and down below as a vast azure mountain range. The ground and all of the rocks on the mountains were all azure in color, presenting a rather peculiar sight to behold. Additionally, the world's origin chi here was far more abundant than it was elsewhere. A hint of elation flashed through Han Li's eyes upon seeing this. According to past experience, certain powerful beings had to be residing in a place with such abundant spiritual chi. Perhaps there were even some powerful primordial tribes in this mountain range, and that could present an opportunity for him to save himself. With that in mind, he immediately activated his spirit refinement technique to release his spiritual sense with all his might. Right at this moment, Xiaobai suddenly opened its mouth and Jin Tong flew out from within. At this moment, her complexion was deathly pale, and her aura was also in a state of disarray, clearly indicating that she had only come out after reaching her absolute limits. "I can't stay in there any longer, Uncle," Jin Tong said in a feeble voice. A hint of sympathy appeared in Han Li's eyes at the sight of her terrible condition, and he summoned a pile of spirit treasures for her as he said, "That's fine. Take a rest. I'll think of a way to save us." Jintong nodded feebly in response, then sat down before picking up a spirit treasure and stuffing it into her own mouth. Han Li took a deep breath as he continued to pilot the flying carriage forward while scouring his surroundings with his spiritual sense. Even though the Azure Mountain Range was very abundant in spiritual chi, there were no perilous terrains that could be used to his advantage, nor any signs of settlement from powerful primordial tribes. As he continued to fly onward, his heart slowly began to sink. Several 100,000 kilometers away, the gold-devouring immortal was racing through the air with cold-killing intent flashing in its eyes. The golden light radiating from its body was glowing brighter and brighter, resembling a scorching golden flame, and it sped up even further. It could clearly sense that the distance between itself and its target was rapidly shrinking. Right at this moment, a burst of azure light flashed over a mountain face deep in the Azure Mountain Range, and the rock face began to warp, transforming into a giant face that cast its gaze toward the gold-devouring immortal. The gold-devouring immortal paid no heed to this. Its only objective was to capture its target, so it merely ignored anything else that didn't actively get in its way. It continued to accelerate as it flew past the mountain face without pause, and as time passed, it spotted a speck of green light on the distant horizon up ahead. The ball of green light was flying away from the gold-devouring immortal, but at a far slower speed. The gold-devouring immortal's eyes instantly lit up with excitement upon seeing this, and it let loose a piercing screech as it sped up even further. Just a few seconds later, it appeared directly behind the ball of green light, which contained the flying carriage that Hanli was on. Hanli and others were all very alarmed and panicked at the sight of the gold-devouring immortal, and upon spotting the panicked expressions on their faces, a sense of immense joy welled up in the gold-devouring immortal's heart. It opened its mouth to release a thick pillar of golden light, which appeared behind the flying carriage in a flash before crashing down with tremendous power. Standing on the carriage, the spiritual light around Hanli's body brightened significantly, as did the green light emanating from the flying carriage, and it moved several kilometers horizontally in the blink of an eye, allowing it to just barely evade the pillar of golden light. However, the pillar of golden light then suddenly exploded into countless thin rays of golden light, which resembled countless golden flying swords that hurtled directly toward the flying carriage. A resounding boom rang out as the flying carriage exploded into a ball of radiant green light, following which a streak of azure light shot out from within before fleeing into the distance. A cold sneer appeared on the gold-devouring immortal's face as it lashed out with one of its front limbs, unleashing a massive blade of golden light that was close to 10,000 feet in length. The blade of light was curved to resemble the blade of a scythe, and there was a layer of rippling golden light over its surface. As it swept through the air with tremendous power, bursts of immense invisible force were erupting out of the blade, causing the entire space within a radius of several dozen kilometers to compress forcefully toward the streak of azure light from all directions. The streak of azure light was instantly slowed down significantly as a result. Right at this moment, a thunderous roar rang out from within the streak of azure light, and a giant furry golden fist abruptly emerged amid a flash of golden light. There were countless golden runes surging around the fist, and it was crashing toward the giant golden blade up above with unstoppable might. At the same time, a piercing screech rang out as a huge streak of translucent golden light erupted forth, transforming into a golden sword projection that was over 10,000 feet in length before sweeping toward the giant golden blade as well. The golden sword projection was extremely fast, leaving a trail of afterimages in its wake. Yet, as soon as it clashed against the giant golden blade, it was instantly sliced into two. However, the golden light radiating from the giant golden blade also shuddered unsteadily, while its downward momentum was also somewhat arrested. Right at this moment, the golden fist struck the golden blade with tremendous power. An earth-shattering boom rang out as a burst of blinding golden light erupted in all directions, alongside waves of immense power that eradicated the restrictive force in the surrounding space. The giant fist was almost sliced into two, and blood immediately came gushing out of the wound, but the golden blade had also been destroyed. A massive golden ape stumbled unsteadily out of the golden light, and it was panting heavily, while large sections of its fur were stained red with blood. On one shoulder of the golden ape stood Jin Tong in her beetle form, while standing on his other shoulder were Xiao Bai and Taoist Xie, both of which had rather unsteady auras, indicating that they had been injured when the flying carriage was destroyed. Furthermore, Taoist Xie's left arm was nowhere to be seen, while Xiao Bai was carrying a massive gash on its back. Jin Tong cast a vicious gaze toward the gold-devouring immortal, but the fear deep in her eyes was very apparent. The gold-devouring immortal paid no heed to Han Li and the others, as it focused its gaze solely on Jin Tong, and a hint of greed flashed through its eyes. In the next instant, it abruptly vanished from the spot. The giant golden immediately sprang into action upon seeing this, darting away to the side as a massive golden shadow. However, right at this moment, an even faster streak of golden light emerged before flashing past the golden ape, instantly inflicting a deep wound that began bleeding profusely. The golden ape flew away into the distance before drawing to a halt, and it was revealed that a massive gash had been sliced into its body from its chest-lower abdomen, and the wound was so deep that bone was visible through it. At the same time, one of Jin Tong's front limbs had also been severed, and there was a pained look on her face. Meanwhile, the streak of golden light drew to a halt not far away, then faded to reveal the gold-devouring immortal. which was holding Jin Tong's severed front limb in its mouth. A burst of golden light flew out to sweep up the limb before sucking it into its mouth, and a blissful look appeared on its face, as if it were savoring the finest delicacy in the world. The giant golden ape hurriedly pressed a hand over the huge gash that had been sliced into body, and a layer of green light flashed over the palm of its hand, upon which the massive gash quickly sealed, while the bleeding also ceased. Immediately thereafter, it sprang through the air before taking on Hanli's azure Luan bird form amid a flash of azure light, then began flying away as quickly as it could. At the same time, bursts of golden light emerged from the azure Luan bird's body, and the faint projection of a rapidly revolving golden wheel could be seen within the golden light. All of a sudden, around a dozen identical golden and azure projections emerged from the azure Luan bird's body, all of which were also giving off identical auras as they shot forth in different directions. And they were no slower than the gold-devouring immortal. A hint of surprise flashed through the gold-devouring immortal's eyes as it sensed the time law aura emanating from the golden wheel, and it lashed out with both of its front limbs in unison. Violent spatial fluctuations instantly swept through the surrounding area in a radius of several hundred kilometers, and countless bursts of radiant golden light erupted out of thin air, instantly forming a golden spirit domain that encompassed all of the azure Luan bird projections, slowing them down significantly.